So hey there fellow YouTubers, Frank Bush here again. So in the last video I put out, I showed people how to use the modular Ropecraft system that I have here and to rapidly assemble things like shelters and kitchens and that kind of stuff. So in this video I'm going to kind of carry on showing different examples of different things you can do, and I want to show specifically how to build out like smoke racks and tables and things along that lines that you can move around your camp with ease and doesn't take any knots to assemble, and you can do it rapidly on the fly. So if you're interested in that kind of content, stay tuned. Okay, so for the core examples I want to show, I'm going to need some critical gear. So I've got two rolled up mats that are sitting here. I've got my modular Ropecraft system, which I've shown in details in previous videos of how to make and different examples in previous videos as well. And then I've got 4 shorter sticks that sit here and 4 longer ones that are here, yeah? So when it comes to some of the examples as we move through, if I need a couple more sticks, I'll grab them and just throw them into the example. But generally speaking, the only things that you need to kind of pack in with you when you're out in the field would be to have these mats, say, and the modular Ropecraft system. Everything else you could harvest off the land with ease, yeah? But even the mats you can make and the cordage you can make and all that. There's lots of tutorials on YouTube about making stuff like cordage and making, you know, primitive mats and that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to cover all that in this video. It'll be purely just building out the advanced structures, yeah? So the first thing I'm going to do is just give a really quick breakdown of what these do-it-yourself simple modular Ropecraft systems are. So, and I show this, I have to show this pretty well in every video that does the example, because this stuff isn't common knowledge at this point in time. But I've done off 20 of these units here, and all they are is little individual units that have a loop, and then there's 4 overhand knots with doubled up line on them, and then there's a length of about 1 foot where there's nothing on it, it's just cordage, and then the same thing on the other side, yeah? So I've done off 20 of these units that I normally keep in just a stack, and you know, you could do 30 or 40 or whatever you wanted, but I've just pulled off 5 that we're going to use in the example today to give you an idea how little cordage this entire construct takes. Of, like I say, out of a pack of 20, I'm only using a quarter of them to build out what I'm about to show, yeah? Okay, so I'll show you the very first step in the process now. So I've got one of these individual modular Ropecraft components with just the loops at both ends. I'm going to take the one, pay no attention to my thumb, I banged it in my truck door a couple weeks back, and you know, it's doing its thing. But either way, I take one side of this modular Ropecraft unit and kind of roll it on itself and just form that little sliding loop as such, where it can kind of move about there. And I'm going to take the other end, and I'm just going to take this and feed it through as such. And now once I get past that first knot right here, once I get past that first knot, I just want to kind of allow this to cinch up on itself and lock in behind that knot like such. And you can see now of it forms a loop that's locked and it's not going anywhere. And if I want to undo that loop, I simply just, I'll bring it up close to show you. There's a little line that kind of goes across the back. I just break that. It loosens it enough to start to kind of give room. And then I can open this back out and just slide that back off easy enough, and I'm back down to having my original kit. So like I say, I'll just turn around and put that through, connect it as such, and let it lock in behind that knot, and we're there. So I'm going to use this loop now with the 4 larger pieces of sticks that I have over here. I'm going to take the 4 larger ones and use it in combination with this ring. So I'll shift camera angles and we'll move on to the next part of the video, yeah? Okay, so like I say, I've got these 4 larger sticks now, and I'm just down at the one end of them. I'm going to take that loop now that I made 2 seconds ago, and I'm just going to roll it onto itself and double it up so it forms kind of a doubled loop, if you will. And I'm just going to slide that over top of all 4 of these units as such. So nothing complex, really simple. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the first one and the third one. I'm going to roll those onto each other, or onto themselves, if you will. I'm just going to roll that as such. And I want to make sure that when it comes to the sticks now, within reason, I've got equal amounts sticking out on this side is this, so that they're evenly kind of set on there. And I'm going to keep rolling the first and the third stick. I'm going to keep turning it. I'll stand it up and shift camera angles, but I'm going to keep turning it until these start to bind up on themselves, and it just becomes 4 legs for a quad pod, if you will. Yeah, so I'll shift camera angles back and just show you what I'm talking. So like I say, right at this point, I want to kind of have it where they're just evenly set on from both sides, and that way it balances when I stand it up. Yeah, but the thinking really is I'm just going to kind of hold the first and the third in my left hand and the second and the fourth in my right, and I'm going to lift those up, and I'm just going to start to turn them, and I'm going to pass now the first and the third through and twist them as such, so that they just start to bind up with each other on the top. And as simple as that, before I even commit it to be too tight, I'll just make sure all my bamboo within reason is pretty even at the tops for the spacing and stuff, and then just allow the tension to apply. And I can now stand this out, and I've got a quad pod, if you will, that'll stand up and hold to its own. So I'll come in and show you a close-up on this, and then we'll start to move on to the next part, yeah? So like I say, here's a close-up of kind of what it'll end up looking like at the top of this quad pod, where all it's done is just kind of bind up the cordage to each one of the sticks, and that way they're all kind of interlocked and held to each other. And I've got this one loop that comes off here. I could use this for things, but in this example I won't be. But just so you're aware of that, extra loop's already there and ready to go, yeah? So either way, this quad pod is kind of stable now. So I'll shift camera back and I'll show you some of the next steps as we move through the process, yeah? Okay, so now I've got 4 other modular Ropecraft system components that I've just got my hand here, and I want to attach these all on, and I want to have them all be kind of even with each other, and I want them all hanging within reason right in here from the center. So just given the layout that I have of the sticks, of how they've kind of naturally sat to each other, I think my most logical conclusion is I'm just going to come up through the center here, and I'm going to hook over this stick and just bring it back down and let it kind of sit and make sure that it's snug and in there as deep as it can go. And I'm going to do the exact same thing now with all 4 of them. Like I say, I'm not tying any knots or anything. I'm just simply setting them on and then letting them sit in place. And just as quick as that, you know, they will kind of get tighter in through there as more cordage comes, but I'll stop and show you in 2 seconds here of it's all on there pretty evenly now when it comes to these drop lines and how they hang in relationship to each other. So you want to just get those to be as even as you possibly can when it comes to them sitting. You know, if there's a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch or so, it's okay, but you definitely want to have them as close as can be when it comes to them hanging off this quad pod. So I'll just kind of pan down and show you. So we just have these 4 units hanging now, yeah? Really elementary. Okay, so now as you can see, these drop lines are all hanging within reason, relatively even with each other, yeah? So I've gone and grabbed one of my smaller branches now, and I'm just going to take one of these units and I'm going to bring it out and I'm going to wrap it down a leg. And it doesn't have to be a super tight wrap, but I want to get it to the point where the first knot on the second half of the modular Ropecraft system, if you will, so we had the loop with the 4 knots, just as this knot starts to get to the point where it's to the leg of the quad pod, I just want to stop and feed a stick through on that end. And now I'm going to take another one of these cordage, you know, the modular Ropecraft system. I'm going to take another one of these. I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to come within reason as equal as I can down this other side and do some slight wraps around here as well. And then when I get to the point that I feel like it's hanging evenly on this side, I'll just stick this end through the loop on the end. And what I'll do now is I'll kind of step back a little bit and see how even these sticks look, and if I want to wrap them to bring this unit up a little higher, or how I want to go about that. So I'll kind of show you that. I'll shift camera angles and I'll show you that part. So like I say, I just shifted the camera angle to hopefully give you guys a better idea of exactly what I'm talking here. So I feel like this side is a little bit higher than this side, yeah? So when it comes to making small adjustments that are, you know, easy and flexible and that kind of stuff, if I don't like how it's balanced, I'm just going to turn around and take this back out of its loop on this side and potentially just bring it around for another turn and then hook it in again and just see, did that correct my problem or did it make it worse, or where is it sitting, you know? And I can adjust that until I feel like I'm pretty happy. And in what I've just done, it really seems to be that cross, you know, that cross branch here looks like it's a lot more level, yeah? So that's kind of how you fine-tune the leveling of things when you're out in the field. If you find you're on slightly uneven terrain in the patch you've set on and that kind of stuff, you can adjust, you know, where these horizontal bars, if you will, sit, and, you know, their ratio to each other, and to keep things as level as possible, yeah? So that's just really, like I say, by eyeball. I'm not out here, you know, using levels and that kind of stuff. You know, this is more for a bushcraft context, yeah? So now I'm going to do the exact same thing I just did with the other two drop lines that we have hanging here onto the back side of this quad pod, yeah? So like I say, I'll just show you this side now, and I'll just do it in real time, you know, without walking through everything and, you know, granular level detail and all that happiness, and show you how simple this really is, you know, as you're kind of going through time. You know, and I literally just ballpark it in the beginning, because I know that, yeah, I might have to do some fine adjustments and that kind of stuff. I step back, kind of look to see, all right, how level they are, and I'm lucky in this scenario, they've really sat level to each other right from the get-go. So it makes it simple in that regard. And I'll move on to the next step. I'll just even these out so that both sides are kind of square to each other and all that happiness. But now we'll kind of move on to the next step of the build, yeah? So I just grabbed a pile of sticks that I had off camera there just to show this example, but this is where you could already stop at this point in time and put out just, you know, obviously these sticks are a little long for the example, but you could easily put out a bunch of small sticks across this to make it as your smoker for hanging meat on when it came to, you know, drying and curing meats over the fire and that kind of stuff. And as you can see, you know, it's really quick and simple to do, where you just be hanging strips of meat off of each one of these sticks. And if you wanted to have it be, you know, kind of a wider base or something, you just bring out the two legs and all of a sudden your base becomes larger and that kind of stuff, right? So, and obviously you could lash this down if you wanted to, you know, but when it comes to drying racks and stuff, sometimes it's better to just pull off individual ones when you're drying the meat and stuff. You know, you don't necessarily always want to have everything kind of bolted and strapped down, right? But I'll just kind of shift camera angles and come in a bit, make sure I'm still getting this on camera decent. But yeah, just to give you an idea of kind of doing a quick, you know, smoke rack and that kind of stuff. Like I say, this took 5 units of the modular Ropecraft system cordage, and other than the one hitch we did in the beginning to form that loop, this entire structure came together without knots. But when it comes to kind of advancing this construct further, I'll just shift you back a bit here. Hopefully we're getting the full scope of everything into the camera well. But when it comes to, you know, wanting to use this for more advanced stuff now, I'll pull these sticks back off and I'll show further examples of kind of, you know, how much further you can take this as you move through time, yeah? And I'll kind of, I won't go through every possible scenario because obviously that becomes, you know, unlimited, but I'll go through some ideas to get the wheels turning of how you could easily scale this thing up to do far greater tasks than just be a smoke rack. So like I say, this structure alone can serve a lot of different purposes when it comes to, you know, utilizing it out in the field, you know, just to give you more of a horizontal plane to start to work with. But what I'm going to do now is to kind of further the example I want to show out today. So when it came to these modular Ropecraft systems, we had the loop with the 4 knots. So I'm going to go to the one that's at the very top of the one right here, and I'm just going to feed a stick through here. And then I'm going to bring that across, and I'm going to go through the top of, you know, the top loop, if you will, of the component that's on this leg, and just feed it through there. And because I know those bottom levels were already leveled for me down here within reason. I'll stop and, you know, double check that everything looks nice and, you know, all that kind of stuff. That way happiness prevails. But in essence, I'm now creating a second tier rack that I can use, yeah? So I'll do the same on the other side, and then I'll show you how to really quickly turn this into a multi-level table structure. So now, like I say, I'll slide in my fourth stick here, and all I'm doing is the loop that's sitting on the top of this one side, like I say, I'm just simply feeding the stick right through it. I'm not tying any knots or anything in this scenario. It's really, really elementary. And as long as the sticks are small enough that they'll go through those loops, it's easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? Now obviously you could cut the lengths of these sticks to exactly how you want them and all that kind of stuff if you wanted this to have a more kind of clean finished look. For this example, I'm more concerned with showing you the speed at which you can do these things, yeah? So now I've got the four horizontal sticks set in place. I'll stop, we'll shift camera angles, and then we'll move on to the next step, yeah? Okay, so I'll just stop and show you this camera angle now, where I've got my two kind of horizontal levels that sit here and here. Now within reason, they're not perfect obviously, but you eyeball them and get them as close to level as you can, and that should be enough. And if you do that with the bottom ones, that's normally enough to kind of solve the one for the top, even if it's off on one side, say an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch, you know, a centimeter or two if you will. That's not a showstopper when it comes to this kind of stuff, yeah? But yeah, let's get this into a fully functioning table now at this point. Okay, so now this is where your mats, or, you know, your sticks, or, you know, planks that you've cut, or any of that kind of stuff start to come into play. So in this example, I've got these two little bamboo mats, yeah? And now as long as your mats can sit where they can sit on both beams and still have, you know, 1 inch or 2 on the edges, you're normally in a pretty good state at that point in time. So the thinking really though is I can simply just roll these mats out and have them cover that space, and I now have a functioning platform as a multi-tiered table that I can use, and it's just that easy. Now I'll go and I'll step the camera back and show you just kind of what this looks like from a distance. Like I say, you can easily cut the side branches down a bit, and you can use Canadian jam knots, or arbor knots if you will, to tie these points off. If you want to have it that the top rack is a bit wider, instead of having the sticks on the inside, you can put them to the outside just by simply adjusting how you're doing things. In this specific example, I've got both the top ones to the inside, but if you want to kind of maximize continuity between one level and the next down, it's easy enough to shift that and adjust it, if you will, yeah? So all that stuff is flexible and easy, but I'll stop, I'll kind of shift back now and show you what this looks like from a distance to give you an idea of, you know, how practical this would be as a table. Like I say, this is a level surface now. I can apply weight on here with ease just by using these roll mats. I can apply weight on here with easy and have it be a nice flat surface to work with, yeah? Let me just shift camera angles. So like I say, just kind of shift the camera back to give you an idea of what this thing looks like now. And like I say, it'd be easy enough to turn around and clean off the extra edges of the sticks that are running horizontal. You can easily cut those to be a little smaller so they fit nicer and that kind of stuff. And it's easy enough to use jam knots, you know, slash armor knots, to kind of strap those in place a little more permanently. You could easily turn around and quick lash on some sticks going across from this side to this side, where you just laid one on and then quick lashed it down if you wanted to kind of lock this in its proportions and all that kind of stuff. But one way or the other, you don't really have to do that with this kind of construct. I'll go grab a couple things from the house and I'll show you an example of kind of the amount of weight load that I can put on this. It's actually half decent, yeah? So 2 seconds, I'll go grab some gear, throw it on the tables, and show you how good it is. Okay, so I just went and grabbed some of the stuff off my table that I had sitting in the living room there and threw it on here just to kind of give you an example of, you can see this table structure has no real issue with carrying, you know, half decent amount of loads. And when it comes to, you know, how stable is this thing, you know, I'm shaking it, I'm wiggling it, moving it with my hand. Obviously if you knocked it over, it's going to fall over, but you know, within reason, it's a fairly stable surface that you can easily work with, yeah? And you know, I've got, that's a 1,000-foot spool of paracord sitting on there. I've got some tarred bank line and some other cordage. I got lots of cordage on there. You know, the weight of it on there is probably about 5-10 pounds worth of stuff sitting on these surfaces. You know, of course I had to throw out the little cat, because why not? But yeah, one way or the other, it shows you the kind of level of functionality you can have just by using some small mats and a couple sticks when you're out in the field to start to form surfaces and stuff. So I'll stop and kind of shift camera angles and talk about, you know, some further expansions you can do on this as well with ease. Yeah. Okay, now it's getting a little breezy, so my hair is gonna start going nuts, but such is life. But now if I wanted to expand out this concept, you know, up to this point in time, I've only used 5 of the modular Ropecraft systems, so I've used a very small number of these to even get to this point. And you can see that the vast majority of it, I mean, all of it, there was no knots. I had one hitch to make the loop in the beginning, and that's it, right? So, but if I wanted to expand this and use 4 more of the modular Ropecraft system components, where, you know, I'm up to using 9 now, it's easy enough to turn around and just say, I want to strap onto these sticks now that are the table, and just daisy chain on, you know, more of them, where I'm just using the sticks to kind of give me a point to brace from. And now I can turn around and easily hook in, you know, sticks on this end and have it where I form another surface down further. But I know we're getting really close to the ground here and stuff, and you know, I can do it all the way along. Any point where there's one of those little loops that exist in my system, it's easy enough to just feed another stick through and have it pop out on this end, right? And like I say, when it comes to covering these to give you surfaces, you might want to have finer mats up at the top to kind of give you a nice, really clean level surface, and then down below you might want to do things almost like we did with the smoke rack, where here, I'll just put a couple of these on the other side. But you could easily do similar kinds of things where, you know, if you wanted just a rack to keep things up off the dirt and that kind of stuff, then you weren't overly concerned about, you know, it being perfectly level, or, you know, being that nothing's going to slide or move around on that surface. You know, you don't have to have the fine mats, you can just go with sticks, right? But like I say, it's just this simple. There's literally no knots involved. I'm just feeding sticks through loops. I mean, you can't get any simpler than that. And because the structure is designed the way it is, that the more you add on to these lower layers, the more it's going to want to, and I can pick, there's multiples here, so sorry, I know I'm kind of rambling in the talk, but I'll just pick a different spot to give me kind of varying height and options. Just set that in as such. And now it's easy enough, like I say, where, you know, if we put in the sticks like we had with the smoke sticks, you know, the smoke rack sticks earlier, it's easy enough to just create an area where you're able to just put larger items down here just to get them up off the dirt, right? But if you had more mats, you could easily turn around and place mats in along and just have a multi-tiered system. So I'll stop and shift camera angles and kind of show this from a different angle here and there, right, to give you an idea. And then I'll talk one more thing you can kind of do to these types of constructs with ease, and show you that, you know, these can become super flexible when you're using them out in the field. And like I say, because there's no knots involved, I'll go through it in the video of tearing this entire structure down and how long that actually takes, you know. But all the sticks to do the forming, didn't have to bring out into the field with me. I really, in this example specifically, the only things I needed were those little mats that I had and my modular Ropecraft system. Normally all these sticks I could just harvest off in the field when I was out there, right, in a matter of a few minutes. Like I say, I'll shift camera angles and kind of show it to you from the front and stuff, yeah. Alright, so just shifted camera angle. Hopefully this gives you a good angle on everything. And you can see I just on the bottom and on the second from the bottom racks, I just put some X's on there, so hopefully the camera can see that a little easier. You know, I know the details here. I'll try to come in a little closer. I know the details on the camera get washy, right, when it comes to bright lights and shadows and all that kind of stuff, but hopefully you can see. And I'll stop and kind of talk one more small detail here, and then I'll show another separate example that can work with this, and then I'll start to wrap it up, yeah? Okay, I'll just come in from this side and see if you know, me creating a bit of shadows helps in the scenario. I know the lighting at this time of day, I know the camera doesn't do the greatest, but I just laid on these sticks as an X just to kind of give you a visual representation when I had the camera, you know, up on the different angle. But if I wanted to kind of lock this in more, it's easy enough as well with these loops that sit on here. If I take the ones that are opposite each other, you know, kitty corner if you will, and just slide through my stick through the one loop, then I come out and slide through that other, I can lock these sticks in, you know, not absolutely, but I can lock them in within reason as well, and have it where, here, I'll flip it around and go this way because it's easier against the nodes on the bamboo. It's just the nature of the type of stick I'm using. But if I go this way and feed that through, as you can see, now this still can move and shift, but this X isn't going to just fall off as easy, yeah? So if I just wanted to have an area where I set down like a bedroll or something like that just to get it up off the ground, or I wanted to set a, you know, a pair of boots to make sure that they weren't sitting, you know, in direct contact with the ground, anything along that lines, it'd be easy enough to do here. You know, I could easily, I'm starting to run out of sticks, but here, I'll grab 2 more sticks here and just show you, you know, that yes, any one of these points now, it's easy enough for this, that same loop now I fed through the X, I'm just gonna feed it through its opposite side, right? And it allows me to kind of spider web together, if you will. I'll flip this one to make it easier. Spider web together, if you will, some basic skeletal structures that are gonna be enough to, you know, hold up a bag or, you know, that kind of stuff without even getting into any of the mats or anything. And because they're all hooked into their loops on the ends, it makes it that even if this wobbles and moves a bit and that kind of thing, you know, it'll still within reason hold its shape, right? And it's easy enough to cut these sticks so you didn't have quite as much surplus, but I just use these sticks to help give the example, yeah? But hopefully that gives you an idea to think about of, you know, if you wanted to just kind of extend this table and have it where, you know, bulk items were up off the ground down below. And when you apply weight down on this area, because of the nature of how we hook these on, the bottom table shelf is now going to be hooked in even more tightly. So the more load you put on the bottom, generally speaking, the levels that are sitting above are going to kind of get locked in more and more and more, and make it that there's a less and less chance of having any instability or any incidents go on with the table, yeah? But I know I'm rambling. Hopefully this showed you a good idea of kind of the flexibility of the type of stuff I was talking about when it came to, you know, improving racks and levels and that kind of stuff. You know, you could do a similar thing for you know, the meat smoker. Earlier in the video when I showed we just laid the rods across, you could easily do similar types of things like I'm showing here to make it more of a rigid structure without getting into having to kind of lash things down using a ton of cordage and taking a ton of time to do, yeah? So I'll stop, I'll shift camera angles, and I'll show you one more example, and then I'll wrap this video up. Okay, so the last examples I'm going to show in this video, and I showed it in the previous one, where I've got loops of cordage that I keep in my bag as well, and I'm just going to use these as the example, yeah, where all I'm doing is taking this loop, I'm simply bringing it over and then feeding one end through the other and allowing it to hold on there. And it's just that simple. That loop is strapped on, and if I want it to be a shorter length, I can double it up on itself and do the same kind of thing where I'm just feeding it through and lashing it on as such. Now I've got 2 loops sitting here that are kind of set as part of this, and it's easy enough now. If I want to turn around and hang things and strap things to here, you know, I'll turn around and take, I've just got a water bottle I'm going to hook up, but I'm going to take this, fold it over on itself so it forms like that, and then just going to roll it in on itself, so I've got a pocket there that sits there as such. Hopefully the camera's seeing that okay. And then I'm just going to slide that over the head of my water bottle, and I'm going to allow the gravity to apply tension onto that water bottle and cause it to cinch up here to hold on to that unit without it falling down, yeah? So I've got the capacity now off of one of these bars to turn around and do exactly this, where I'll do the exact same thing again here and try to show it to you in good visual detail, where I'm folding it in half on itself, and then I'm kind of just rolling it in on itself as such. And now that forms this kind of sliding pocket. And I'll just use a piece of wood for the second example here, where I'm just going to feed a piece of wood through and allow it to kind of set down onto that piece of wood and hold it and lock it. So, you know, if I was doing this up higher, potentially I could be hanging, you know, a jacket or that kind of thing that sat off of the ends of these, you know, pieces of wood. So I just wanted to show you this kind of idea where, depending on where you put these on the table construct, you could easily have things hanging and stuff, but still have surfaces to work with, still have racks to put stuff on. And all of this took less than half of my modular Ropecraft system to build, and there's no knots involved in this entire construct. So I'll shift all the rope and stuff I brought out to show you the weight bearing example earlier in the video. I'll take that all back inside, and then I'll show you how quick it is to actually tear down this unit. You know, when it comes to doing this out in the field, this stuff is all way faster than me describing it, because it takes the extra time to walk through the descriptions of exactly what I'm doing. But as you can see, all this stuff happens really, really quickly when I'm out in the field, you know? It's a matter of seconds and I can have this stuff together, yeah? Well, that's an exaggeration. Maybe 2 or 3 minutes before this entire table would be set up the way you're seeing it in this video at this point. So, like I say, one way or the other, let me get some of the stuff back off and we'll do the teardown and then the closing scenes, yeah? Okay, so the first order of business, I'll just go through taking off this, you know, hanging bottom rack, if you will. And, you know, it's really, really elementary. You just slide all the sticks back out, right? There's not much to it when it comes to stuff. And like I say, because none of this was knots, it all just comes right apart. You know, I might catch on a nub or two on the branches, but, you know, depending on how well you clean up your branches, obviously mine are a little shoddy, but depending on how well you clean up your branches, that whole thing can come apart in seconds, right? And because we didn't actually knot anything on here, these systems are just tied on as such. It's already wanting to come apart all on its own now, but gives you an idea of how simple these things are, right? In fact, I'll just set that back up there to be honest with the time of things, and I'll slide out this stick. Dishonest, but yeah, it obviously doesn't want to stay up there anymore. Fair enough. But you can see now we're covered back those 4 modular Ropecraft pieces. If these were sticks that I just pulled out of the woods, they're disposable. It doesn't matter to me, right? So I'll pull out the sticks now that were on the 2 levels that were up higher, and it's all the same. They just slide out of their loops. I'll shift camera angles here. In fact, I'll do that all real time. Just so there's no tomfoolery. Now when it comes to taking my rolls off, obviously if I made these and that kind of stuff, I'd want to reclaim them and take them with me, but they're all tiny. And I know my hair is going all over the place. The breeze is just getting half decent now. But as you can see, even when it comes to the top horizontal pieces, it's all just the same. They all just slide out. Like I say, it's really just because I'm using the bamboo, and the bamboo has the nubs every 8-10 inches or so, that it slows down this process. If you're using smoother wood, it's, you know, all the quicker. And now with these 4 modular Ropecraft pieces that were wrapped around the legs, we're back to the point of them now where they were all just hanging. And I'll just shift that a little bit up to make sure I'm not missing anything on this. And because we didn't tie these on with knots, this whole thing just pulls right out. All 4 of those are off all in one go. The only thing I have left now is this one lashing that sits on the larger pods, where, in fact, I'll just stop and shift camera angles and do this part separate, yep. I just know when you're swinging sticks around and stuff, it gets hard for the camera to catch it all right, but all I'm going to do now is take the ones that I spun, the first and the third in the beginning, and just spin them back the opposite way, you know, and I can do them one at a time if I want, and it's really easy. Once you get the first one out, the rest of them just come out. Now I'm back down to that doubled up loop that we had, that we hitched in the beginning, and I'll come back to the camera and we'll just undo this loop now, yeah? And I don't think the camera got it well when I did the original recording, so I'm just doing this again, but there's that loop. If I come in close now, you'll see where that little lark's head is that we attached right in behind the knot in the beginning to form that loop. I'm just going to pull on the line that goes across right here. That loosens that up, and I just slide that knot back out, and this is back to being its loop again, and we're off to the races, just having it as the normal modular Ropecraft unit, yeah? So I'll toss that back in the pile and we'll wrap this video up. All right, well, there you have it, fellow YouTubers. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the examples that I showed today, doing like smoke racks and tables and all that kind of stuff. You know, when it comes to using these modular Ropecraft systems, they're really, really flexible for doing stuff out in the field. Hopefully this video, and if you watched the previous video, shows you kind of a small taste of some of the stuff you can do using these types of components without having to tie any knots. You know, most of the knot tying when I'm out in the woods is gone now. It's, you know, all been replaced just by using these components in the ways, the style that I've shown in these videos. You know, when it comes to all those sticks and all that kind of stuff, if I was off in the forest and I was assembling this, I'd harvest those sticks, you know, when I was out in the field, and I would only just bring my 2 little mats and my cordage system, you know, when it comes to wanting to assemble this out in the field. But if you enjoyed this type of content, please like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching, yeah? Cheers.